The story of Joseph begins in the ancient land of Canaan, within a large and complicated family shaped by rivalry, longing, and divine promises. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob, the grandson of Isaac, and the great-grandson of Abraham. Among Jacob's many children, Joseph held a special place in his father's heart because he was the first son born to Jacob's beloved wife, Rachel. This favoritism quietly shaped the atmosphere of the household. Joseph's older brothers watched as their father treated the young boy differently, speaking to him with unusual tenderness and trusting him with responsibilities uncommon for someone so young. Eventually, Jacob gave Joseph a magnificent robe, a richly ornamented garment often described as a coat of many colors. In the culture of that time, such clothing was not merely decorative. It signaled status and distinction within the family. To Joseph's brothers, the robe felt like a public declaration that their father valued Joseph above them. What began as quiet jealousy slowly hardened into resentment, setting the stage for one of the most dramatic family conflicts recorded in the ancient scriptures. Joseph himself was not unaware of the tension growing around him. As a young shepherd who sometimes worked alongside his brothers in the fields, he occasionally brought reports back to his father about how they were managing the flocks. Whether these reports were innocent or critical is not entirely clear, but to his brothers, they felt like betrayal. Their resentment deepened when Joseph began experiencing vivid dreams that seemed to suggest a future in which he would rise above them. In one dream, Joseph saw himself and his brothers binding sheaves of grain in a field. Suddenly, his sheaf stood upright while the sheaves of his brothers gathered around it and bowed down. When Joseph shared the dream, perhaps with youthful excitement rather than pride, the reaction was immediate and fierce. His brothers interpreted the meaning instantly. Joseph believed he would rule over them. Instead of admiration, the dream ignited anger. The idea that the younger brother, already favored by their father, might one day hold authority over them felt unbearable. In the tightly knit social order of ancient families, such a reversal of hierarchy was almost unthinkable. From that moment on, the brothers' jealousy began transforming into something darker, an emotion capable of turning family bonds into dangerous hostility. Not long after, Joseph experienced another dream, one even more striking than the first. This time he saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down before him. Again, Joseph shared the dream with his family, unaware of how deeply his words would disturb them. His brothers immediately recognized themselves represented by the stars, but even more troubling was the symbolism of the sun and moon, which seemed to represent their father and mother. When Joseph explained the dream, the reaction spread beyond the brothers. Even Jacob, who loved Joseph dearly, responded with concern. He asked a question that carried both disbelief and warning. "Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" Yet despite his rebuke, Jacob quietly remembered the dream. The brothers, however, could not forget it. In their minds, Joseph's dreams confirmed their worst fears, that he believed himself destined for greatness over them all. From that point forward, the emotional distance within the family widened. What might have remained simple rivalry between siblings slowly evolved into simmering hatred. The brothers watched Joseph with suspicion, interpreting every word and action as further proof that he imagined himself superior. One day, Jacob sent Joseph on a long journey to check on his brothers, who had taken the family flocks far from home to graze near Shechem. Joseph traveled alone across the rugged countryside, guided only by the directions given to him and the hope of finding his brothers safely tending the animals. After wandering through the fields searching for them, he encountered a man who informed him that the brothers had moved the flocks farther north, toward Dothan. Determined to fulfill his father's request, Joseph continued until he finally saw them in the distance. But the brothers recognized him first. From far away, they saw the unmistakable robe that marked him as their father's favorite. As Joseph approached, the years of jealousy, anger, and humiliation began boiling over. The brothers whispered among themselves, mocking him as the dreamer. In their frustration, they imagined ending the problem permanently. Some proposed killing him and throwing his body into a pit, planning to claim that a wild animal had devoured him. Their bitterness had grown so powerful that the thought of murdering their own brother seemed, in that moment, like a solution to their resentment. Yet not all the brothers were willing to cross that final line. Reuben, the oldest among them, secretly hoped to rescue Joseph later and return him safely to their father. Trying to prevent bloodshed, he suggested a compromise. Instead of killing Joseph, they should throw him alive into an empty cistern, a deep pit once used for collecting water. When Joseph finally reached them, expecting nothing more than a reunion with his brothers, they seized him without warning. The richly colored robe was stripped from his shoulders, the very symbol of the favoritism that had fueled their anger. Then they lowered him into the pit. Alone in the darkness, Joseph called out to them, but the brothers ignored his pleas. As the boy remained trapped below, they calmly sat down nearby to eat a meal, behaving as though nothing extraordinary had happened. The scene reveals the chilling depth of their resentment. What began as jealousy had now turned into cruelty. Joseph, who only hours earlier had been walking through the hills on an ordinary errand, now found himself abandoned in a dry pit, betrayed by the very people who were supposed to protect him. As the brothers sat eating, they noticed a caravan of traders approaching along the desert road. These merchants were traveling from Gilead toward Egypt, carrying spices, balm, and myrrh, valuable goods for the markets of the powerful Nile civilization. At that moment, another brother, Judah, proposed a different plan. Instead of leaving Joseph to die in the pit, they could sell him to the traders. In Judah's reasoning, this would remove Joseph from their lives without making them directly responsible for his death. The suggestion appealed to the others. When the merchants passed by, the brothers lifted Joseph from the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. Bound and taken away with the caravan, Joseph was carried south toward a foreign land he had never seen. When Reuben later returned to the pit and discovered Joseph gone, he was horrified, realizing the rescue he had planned was no longer possible. The brothers then devised a final deception. They slaughtered a goat, dipped Joseph's robe in its blood, and brought it to their father. Jacob recognized the garment immediately and concluded that a wild animal had killed his beloved son, plunging him into deep mourning. While sorrow filled the household of Jacob, Joseph's life was moving in a completely different direction far away. Bound with the caravan of traders, the young man was taken south into the land of Egypt, a powerful kingdom known for its towering monuments, complex government, and vast wealth. In Egypt, Joseph was sold again, this time to a high-ranking official named Potiphar, who served as captain of the guard under Pharaoh. Though Joseph had arrived as a slave in a foreign land, the biblical account describes something remarkable. God was with him. Over time, Joseph proved himself trustworthy, disciplined, and wise. Everything he was assigned to do began to prosper. Potiphar noticed this unusual success and gradually entrusted Joseph with more responsibility. Eventually, Joseph was placed in charge of the entire household, overseeing the servants, the fields, and the resources of his master. Potiphar trusted him so completely that he concerned himself with nothing except the food he ate. The young man who had once been thrown into a pit by his brothers was now managing the estate of an important Egyptian official. Yet, despite the outward stability of his life, Joseph remained a stranger in a land far from his family, still carrying the memory of betrayal that had changed the course of his destiny. Joseph's rise within Potiphar's household was accompanied by another detail mentioned in the ancient narrative. Joseph was handsome and well-built. His appearance did not go unnoticed, particularly by Potiphar's wife. Over time, she began watching him closely, and eventually her interest turned into persistent temptation. She repeatedly urged Joseph to lie with her, attempting to draw him into a secret relationship. But Joseph refused firmly. His refusal was not merely out of fear of punishment. It came from a sense of loyalty and moral conviction. He reminded her that Potiphar had entrusted everything in the house to his care and had withheld nothing from him except her. To betray that trust would be a great wrongdoing. More importantly, Joseph saw such an act as a sin against God. Day after day, the pressure continued, but Joseph consistently avoided being alone with her. One day, however, when he entered the house to attend to his duties, no other servants were present. Seizing the moment, Potiphar's wife grabbed his garment and again demanded that he lie with her. Joseph immediately fled the room, leaving his cloak in her hands. Though his decision protected his integrity, the situation was about to take a dangerous turn. Humiliated by Joseph's rejection and angered that he had escaped her grasp, Potiphar's wife quickly devised a story to protect her own reputation. Holding Joseph's cloak as evidence, she called the servants of the house and accused him of attempting to assault her. She claimed that Joseph had come into the house intending to dishonor her, and that she had cried out loudly, causing him to flee and leave his garment behind. When Potiphar returned home, she repeated the accusation, presenting the cloak as proof of the alleged attack. Hearing this report, Potiphar's anger was ignited. Without any formal investigation recorded in the narrative, Joseph was immediately taken away and thrown into prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. Once again, Joseph experienced a dramatic fall from stability into suffering. He had done nothing wrong, yet his integrity had led him into punishment rather than reward. The trusted steward of a powerful household now found himself locked behind prison walls. The story captures a harsh reality of human life. Sometimes righteousness does not immediately bring justice. Yet the biblical narrative quietly repeats a familiar theme. God remained with Joseph even in the darkest circumstances. Inside the prison, Joseph's character once again began to shape his circumstances. Over time, the keeper of the prison noticed Joseph's reliability and wisdom. Much like Potiphar before him, the warden eventually placed Joseph in charge of the other prisoners, trusting him to oversee daily responsibilities. Whatever Joseph did there prospered, and the prison keeper no longer concerned himself with the tasks he assigned to him. During this period, two important prisoners arrived, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker of Pharaoh. Both men had offended the king and were placed under Joseph's supervision while awaiting judgment. One night, each of them experienced troubling dreams that left them deeply disturbed the following morning. Seeing their troubled expressions, Joseph asked why they appeared so sad. They explained that they had dreamed, but had no one capable of interpreting the dream's meaning. Joseph responded with humility, acknowledging that interpretations belong to God, but inviting them to share the dreams anyway. In the ancient world, dreams were often considered messages filled with symbolic meaning, and both prisoners hoped that understanding their dreams might reveal their future. The chief cupbearer spoke first. In his dream, he saw a vine before him with 3 branches. As the vine budded, blossoms appeared, and clusters of ripe grapes quickly formed. Holding Pharaoh's cup in his hand, he squeezed the grapes into the cup and placed it into Pharaoh's hand. When Joseph heard the dream, he explained its meaning. The 3 branches represented 3 days. Within 3 days, Joseph said, Pharaoh would lift up the cupbearer's head and restore him to his former position. Once again, he would place the cup into Pharaoh's hand as he had done before. Encouraged by this interpretation, the chief baker shared his dream as well. In his vision, he carried 3 baskets of bread on his head, filled with baked goods prepared for Pharaoh. Yet birds came and ate the food from the baskets. Joseph's interpretation was sobering. The 3 baskets also represented 3 days, but their outcome would be very different. Within 3 days, Pharaoh would lift up the baker's head from him, and he would be executed, with birds feeding on his body. Joseph's words carried both hope and warning, reflecting the mysterious way dreams were believed to reveal hidden truths. 3 days later, Pharaoh celebrated his birthday, a royal occasion that included reviewing the fate of his imprisoned servants. Exactly as Joseph had interpreted, the chief cupbearer was restored to his position, once again placing the cup into Pharaoh's hand. The chief baker, however, was executed just as the dream had foretold. Joseph's interpretations proved completely accurate. Before the cupbearer left prison, Joseph had made one humble request. He asked the man to remember him when he returned to Pharaoh and to mention his case so that he might be released. Joseph explained that he had been kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews and had done nothing to deserve imprisonment. For a moment, it seemed that Joseph's suffering might finally end. But the story takes another unexpected turn. The cupbearer returned to his position in the royal court and forgot about Joseph entirely. Days passed, then months, and eventually years. Joseph remained in prison, seemingly overlooked and abandoned once again. Yet the narrative quietly prepares the stage for a dramatic change, because soon Pharaoh himself would experience dreams that no one in Egypt could explain. Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, began experiencing troubling dreams that none of his magicians or wise men could interpret. In the first dream, he stood on the banks of the Nile and saw 7 healthy, fat cows rise from the river. Then 7 thin, sickly cows came up and devoured the healthy cows. In the second dream, 7 full and plump heads of grain grew on a single stalk, followed by 7 thin and scorched heads that swallowed the healthy ones. Pharaoh awoke troubled, realizing these dreams carried a weighty meaning. He summoned all his advisors, but none could offer an explanation. Word of the king's distress eventually reached the chief cupbearer, who remembered Joseph. Only now, after years of prison, did he recall the young Hebrew who had interpreted his own dream with perfect accuracy. The cupbearer mentioned Joseph to Pharaoh, describing his wisdom and integrity. Pharaoh immediately sent for Joseph, summoning him from the dungeon. Joseph, now a man hardened by betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment, appeared before the most powerful ruler in the world, completely unafraid, ready to deliver a message far greater than any personal ambition. Pharaoh greeted Joseph with urgency and recounted the dreams that had left him restless. Joseph listened, carefully reflecting silently. Before speaking, he reminded Pharaoh that interpretations belonged to God, not human wisdom, emphasizing that understanding the dreams required divine insight. Then Joseph proceeded to explain the meaning. The 7 healthy cows and 7 full heads of grain represented 7 years of unprecedented abundance in Egypt, while the 7 thin cows and 7 scorched heads of grain represented 7 years of severe famine that would follow. He warned that the abundance would be so great that it would fill the land with plenty, yet the subsequent famine would be so extreme that it could destroy lives if no preparation were made. Joseph advised Pharaoh to select a wise and discerning man to oversee the collection and storage of food during the 7 years of plenty, effectively creating a reserve to sustain Egypt through the 7 years of famine. Pharaoh, astonished both by Joseph's wisdom and the clarity of his explanation, recognized the providential nature of this young man who had survived incredible adversity. Impressed beyond measure, Pharaoh made a remarkable decision. He not only confirmed the accuracy of Joseph's interpretation, but elevated him above all officials in Egypt, granting him authority second only to Pharaoh himself. Joseph was given a signet ring, fine garments, and a chariot, and instructed to oversee the entire operation of gathering and storing grain. Pharaoh even gave him a new Egyptian name, Zaphenath-Paneah, symbolizing his new status. In addition, Joseph was married to Asenath, further securing his integration into Egyptian society. From the youngest son of Jacob, sold into slavery by his own brothers, Joseph had risen to the pinnacle of Egyptian power. His wisdom, integrity, and faithfulness allowed him not only to survive adversity but to turn a potential tragedy into a tool for preserving life. The biblical narrative emphasizes the providential hand of God guiding Joseph's journey, showing that even betrayal and suffering can serve a greater purpose when met with patience and righteousness. As the years of plenty passed, Joseph oversaw the storage of abundant grain throughout Egypt. Silos and storehouses filled, capturing the bounty of the land in preparation for the predicted famine. Then the famine arrived, exactly as Joseph had warned. It was not limited to Egypt alone. It spread across neighboring nations, affecting even the land of Canaan, where Joseph's family still lived. Jacob's sons, responsible for feeding their own households, began to hear rumors of grain in Egypt. Desperate to survive, they decided to journey to Egypt, unaware that the very brother they had sold into slavery now held the power to provide for them. When they arrived, they bowed before the steward of Pharaoh's house, fulfilling Joseph's earlier dreams in ways none of them could have anticipated. Yet Joseph's identity remained concealed at first. He recognized them immediately, but the brothers did not recognize him. The narrative here reveals the tension between justice, mercy, and providence, as Joseph wrestles with how to confront those who had caused him immense suffering without losing the wisdom he had gained from his trials. Joseph tested his brothers to see if they had changed. He accused them of being spies, imprisoning one brother as a guarantee while sending the others to bring their youngest sibling, Benjamin, to Egypt. These tests revealed both the lingering guilt and emerging repentance of the brothers. Over a series of interactions, Joseph observed their concern for one another and their willingness to protect Benjamin, their father's beloved son. The emotional journey of the brothers mirrored Joseph's own journey of endurance, faith, and moral clarity. Eventually, Joseph could no longer contain his emotions. In a dramatic and compassionate revelation, he revealed his identity, speaking with both authority and love. He reassured them, saying that although they intended harm, God had intended it for good, to save many lives. This declaration frames the story within a broader theological context, emphasizing divine providence and the mysterious ways in which suffering can serve a larger purpose. The family of Jacob was reunited in Egypt, and Joseph provided for them generously. He brought his father, his brothers, and their households to live in the land of Goshen, giving them security and sustenance throughout the remaining years of famine. Jacob, once broken by grief over the apparent loss of Joseph, now experienced restoration and joy. The narrative closes with a reflection on God's providential plan. From betrayal and suffering, divine purpose was realized, and lives were preserved. Joseph's story, filled with complex human emotions, injustice, and ultimate redemption, has resonated across centuries as a testament to resilience, integrity, and faith. It illustrates how human cruelty can be transformed into an instrument of salvation when met with wisdom, patience, and trust in the guidance of God. In the final analysis, Joseph emerges as both a historical figure of Egypt and a timeless symbol of hope, showing that even in the darkest circumstances, the arc of life can bend toward justice and restoration.